The Vorthak dreadnought, eternal vengeance, hung in the void like a blade poised to strike, its silver, purple hull glinting under the distant light of a dying star. Commander Vorgel stood motionless on the command deck, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his back, his armored carapace reflecting the dim glow of tactical displays. His slit, pupilled eyes flicked across the holographic projection of the system, a backwater, insignificant by galactic standards, a place where no species of consequence should have thrived. And yet, here they were. Scans complete, Commander, Gromnak rasped, his voice like grinding metal. The scientist's violet ocular implants pulsed as he analyzed the data. The human colony is as expected, primitive. Their defenses are negligible, a single orbital battery, outdated kinetic turrets. Their shields are barely capable of deflecting asteroid debris. Vorgel exhaled through his nasal slits, the sound a whisper of contempt. The Vorthak Dominion had crushed civilizations 1,000 times more advanced than this. The humans were insects, reckless, emotional, their technology cobbled together from stolen scraps of greater races. Proceed with the extraction, Vorgel ordered. Leave no survivors. These eternal vengeances descended. On the surface, Colonel Helen McKay watched the sky darken. The alien warship blotted out the sun, its silhouette jagged and cruel, bristling with weapons that hummed with silver, purple energy. She didn't need scans to know what was coming. The Vorthak weren't here to negotiate. Connell, Corporal Grogan muttered beside her, his grip tightening on his rifle. Orders. McKay didn't answer immediately. Instead, she tapped her wrist terminal, activating a signal buried deep in the colony's comm network. A single pulse, a call for help. Then she looked up. Buy time. The first Vorthak drop pods hit the ground like meteors, their armored shells cracking open to reveal squads of warriors clad in dark steel, their weapons already charged. They moved with mechanical precision, their violet energy rifles cutting through human defenses as if they were paper. Gromnak observed from orbit, his mandibles twitching in amusement. Their resistance is pitiful. They fight like cornered beasts. Vorgel said nothing. He had seen this before, dozens of species, all desperate, all doomed. The humans would break like the others. Then the ground shook, deep beneath the colony. Something awakened. Massive armored vaults hissed open, revealing rows of war machines the Vorthak had never seen. Hulking bipedal walkers, their armor black as void, their limbs reinforced with kinetic dampeners. Railgun batteries unfolded from hidden silos, their barrels humming with stored energy. And above it all, a single word was etched into the steel in jagged human script. Gromnak's scanners screamed. Commander, their energy signatures. Vorgel's spines flared in alarm. The humans hadn't been unprepared. They'd been waiting. Cityon 20, the silent fleet. The ground beneath the Vorthak invasion force screamed. Gromnak's claws dug into his command console as the seismic readings spiked off the charts. His mandibles twitched in erratic pulses, a biological tell of distress no amount of military discipline could suppress. The human colony, supposedly a soft target, a minor outpost, had just detonated a subterranean network of concealed armories. And now, the Earth itself was birthing war machines. From orbit, the Vorthak command vessel's sensors painted a nightmare. The human defenses weren't just hidden, they were buried alive, dormant beneath layers of rock and false thermal signatures. Now, armored vaults yawned open like the jaws of some ancient predator, disgorging walkers that moved with eerie predatory grace. Their blackened hulls drank in the light, their silhouettes jagged and asymmetrical, as if designed to unsettle as much as destroy. Gromnak's voice was a rasp. Their energy signatures. Commander, their F-power chorus. Vorgel's spines flared rigid along his back, his primary eyes narrowing to slits. The human walkers weren't just armored. They were alive with energy, not the clean, disciplined silver, purple of Vorthak technology, but something raw, a deep crimson pulse that throbbed like a heartbeat. Scan them again. Vorgol ordered, his voice low. Gromnock's claws danced over the console, but the readings made no sense. The walkers' power signatures fluctuated wildly, as if their reactors weren't just generating energy. They were consuming it from the air, from the ground, from the very weapons fire directed at them. And then the human counterattack began. The walkers moved. Not with the mechanical precision of Vorthak drones, but with something worse, too purposey. They advanced in staggered formations, their gait uneven, unpredictable. One moment, a walker would lumber forward like a wounded beast. The next, it would surge with terrifying speed, closing the distance before the Vorthak gunners could adjust their aim. And their weapons, Gromnock's breath caught as the first railgun fired. The projectile didn't just pierce a Vorthak heavy armor unit. It liquefied it, the kinetic force transmuting the alloy into molten slag before the secondary payload detonated in a bloom of white, hot plasma. Vorgol's claws flexed. This wasn't just technology. This was Haiti, forged into steel. On the surface, Colonel Helen McKay watched through the dust, choked air as her walkers tore into the Vorthak lines. Her fingers tightened around the grip of her sidearm, the weight of it familiar, comforting. They had waited fierce for this. The Vorthak had come expecting farmers, colonists, for prey. Instead, they had found the Third Armored Legion, the Iron Reckoning, and their war machines, buried not out of fear, but patience. A transmission crackled in her earpiece, Corporal Grogan's voice, rough with adrenaline. "Colonel, they are falling back. Their command ships pulling altitude." McKay's lips curled. "Let them run. Let them see." She keyed the battalion wide channel, her voice calm, deliberate. "Fall units. Advance." They wanted a war. A pause. The walkers' engines growled in unison, their crimson cores flaring brighter. "Give them one." The Vorthak command ship, Dreadspire, hung in the upper atmosphere, like a blade suspended above a throat. Its silver, purple hull pulsed with the rhythmic thrum of its core, a sound like a war drum echoing through the void. Inside, Commander Vorgol stood motionless before the tactical display, his claws flexing against the cold metal of the console. The data streaming across the screen was impossible. Impossible. A Gromnock, the lead scientist, hissed through his mandibles, his violet ocular implants flickering as he parsed the same readings. "The scans must be corrupted," he muttered, his voice a grating rasp. "No species builds like this. Not without reason. Not without fear." Vorgol's crest of armored plates twitched, a subconscious ripple of unease. The humans had been scanned before. Their history was known, their wars petty, their weapons crude, their tactics brutish and inefficient. They were supposed to break under orbital bombardment, scatter before the might of a true interstellar force. The walkers below were not crude. They were ars monstrous. Gromnock's claws danced over the console, pulling up the schematics again. The hologram flickered into existence between them, a skeletal blueprint of the human war machine. Thick armor plating, not just steel but layered composites, ceramic, depleted uranium. Something the scanners labeled reactive nano weave. The weapons were worse: rotary plasma casters, railgun batteries, and most disturbing of all, the secondary systems. "These are not just machines," Gromnock whispered. "They are hunters." Vorgol's gaze locked onto the highlighted subsystems. The walkers had internal countermeasures, heat-seeking fletchets for infantry, EMP dampeners, even as acid sprayers for close quarters boarding. It was over-engineered. It was excessive. It was human. A low chime sounded from the comms array. One of the forward scouts, voice tight with panic. "Commander, their infantry is advancing." They're not stopping." Vorgol turned to the viewport. Below, through the haze of smoke and dust, the human walkers moved with terrifying synchronicity. Their crimson reactor cores pulsed like beating hearts, their armored limbs crushing the remnants of Vorthak barricades beneath them. And between them, smaller figures, human soldiers, advanced without hesitation, Just forward. Gromnak exhaled sharply. Their armor, it's not just shielding. It's adaptive. Our energy weapons are losing efficiency with each volley. They're learning. Vorgel's mandibles clenched. That was the horror of it. The humans hadn't just built weapons, they had built answers. Every attack the Vorthak launched, the walkers adapted. Every strategy, the humans countered. It wasn't just war. It was evolution in steel. A transmission crackled through human frequencies, unencrypted. A woman's voice, calm, deliberate. Vorthak command. This is Colonel McKay of the 3rd Armored Legion. You have one chance to surrender. A pause. Then, softer, colder F. You don't want to see what comes next. Gromnak's ocular implants dimmed. They are not bluffing. Vorgel knew. The scans didn't lie, and neither did the humans. CCTO4. THEBIT. The silence that followed Colonel McKay's transmission was thicker than the smoke coiling from the battlefield. Vorgel's command hub, a brutalist chamber of dark steel and flickering violet holoscreens, pulsed with the erratic heartbeat of a dying defense. His warriors, once proud, once certain, now stood frozen, their armored carapaces reflecting the dim glow of tactical readouts that spelled their doom. Gromnak's claws trembled over the sensor array. The data was undeniable. The human walkers weren't just as resisting their attacks. They were consuming them. Each plasma burst, each kinetic strike, was analyzed, dissected, and rendered obsolete before the next volley could be fired. The Vorthak had waged war across 100 systems, crushed empires beneath their heel. But this was something else. A low, grinding hum vibrated through the deck. The humans were advancing again. Vorgel's mandibles flexed, tasting the acrid tang of ionized air. His mind raced through strategies, each one unraveling before it could fully form. The humans had no patterns, no hesitation. They moved like a storm, relentless, unpredictable. Then the sensors screamed. Fast streaking toward their flank, Gromnak's voice was a rasp. A single human dropship. No escort. Vorgel's ocular implants zoomed in. The vessel was a sleek, angular thing, its hull scorched from atmospheric entry. It moved with purpose, slicing through the wreckage of fallen Vorthak interceptors. No evasive maneuvers, no fear. It had to be, but the scans showed nothing, no hidden signatures, no trailing munitions. Just one ship, one reckless approach. Gromnak's claws twitched. They're hailing us. Vorgel hesitated. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he opened the channel. Static then, a human voice, younger than McKay's, rougher. Vorthak command. This is Corporal Paul Grogan, Terra's 3rd Legion. A pause. I'm here to talk. Gromnak's spines bristled. A soldier. Not an officer. Vorgel's instincts screamed at him to blast the ship from the sky. But curiosity, cold and calculating, stayed his hand. The humans didn't do anything without reason. Scan him, Vorgel ordered. The results flashed across the screen. No weapons. No explosives, just a single human, clad in battle, worn armor, standing alone in the dropship's hold. His vitals were elevated, adrenaline, fear, but his posture was steady. Resolved, Gromnak hissed. It's a distraction. They're maneuvering something else while we're focused on, no. Vorgel cut him off. His gaze locked onto the human's face, projected in grainy holographic detail. There was something in the creature's eyes, not defiance, not hatred. Recognition. The human knew them. And then, like the slow unraveling of a forgotten memory, it clicked. 23 cycles ago, a dying human colony, a Vorthak patrol, ordered to observe, to ignore. But one warrior had disobeyed, one life spared. A debt unpaid. Vorgel's carapace went cold. The human on the screen tilted his head, as if sensing the realization. You remember? Grogan said softly. Good. Outside, the thunder of human walkers grew louder. The bait had been taken. Now the jaws closed. System 5. Shields don't work that way. The Vorthak command bunker shuddered as another artillery shell detonated against the outer shielding. The silver, purple energy barrier flared, dispersing the kinetic force in rippling waves. that made the reinforced alloy walls groan. Gronok's claws twitched over the tactical display, his frills flaring in agitation. That's impossible. The human bombardment wasn't stopping. Every known species in the galaxy fought by the same rules. You pounded a shield until it cracked, then moved in for the kill. But these humans, these reckless, relentless creatures weren't waiting. Their shells kept coming, hammering the barrier in a rhythm that defied logic. Gronok's secondary eyelids flicked shut for a millisecond, recalibrating his vision to the harsh violet readouts. The shield matrix was overheating, not from a single overwhelming strike, but from Saz's sustained pressure. The humans weren't trying to break through. They were melting their way in. Vorgol stood motionless at the viewport, his armored carapace reflecting the strobing impacts outside. The human walkers, hulking, bipedal war machines, advanced in staggered formations, their armored hides shrugging off plasma fire like rain. Each step sent tremors through the ground, a slow, methodical drumbeat of inevitability. But it wasn't the walkers that tightened the vice around Vorgol's thorax. It was the us soldiers between them. Humans moved in packs, fluid and chaotic, darting from cover to cover in bursts of motion that made Vorthak targeting systems lag. Their armor was scarred, their weapons crude by galactic standards. Ballistic rifles, explosive charges, blades, but they wielded them with a terrifying, instinctive precision. And they did not stop. A proximity alert shrieked. Gronok's claws spasmed over the console. "Breach in Sector 7! They're kinetics! They're bypassing the shield harmonics!" Vorgol didn't turn. How? Gronok's frills flattened. They're slowing down. The humans had done the unthinkable. They'd throttled their projectiles, reducing velocity just enough to slip beneath the shield's frequency threshold. It shouldn't have worked. It couldn't work. Shields were meant to stop high-velocity impacts, not this. Not calculation. Outside, a walker's shoulder-mounted cannon spun up, its barrels glowing red-hot. The shot that followed wasn't a plasma lance or a railgun round. It was F's slug, a simple, dense metal projectile, fired at just the right speed. The shield flared, then rippled. The energy matrix destabilizing for a fraction of a second. Long enough, the second shot punched through. The bunker's outer wall screamed as the alloy crumpled, the shockwave hurling Vorthak warriors off their feet. Alarms wailed, their violet light painting the chaos in jagged streaks. Vorgol finally turned from the viewport, his mandibles flexed, tasting the acrid tang of burning metal, and something else. His warriors were disciplined, unbreakable, but the humans fought like they knew they would win. Gronok staggered to his feet, his carapace streaked with coolant fluid. "We have to fall back?" "The shield matrix is..." "No." Vorgol's voice was a blade. He had seen the human's face, heard the recognition in its voice. This wasn't just an attack, it was a reckoning. And the Vorthak did not run from debts. Outside, the thunder of human boots grew louder. The shield was failing, the humans were coming. And Vorgol understood, with a cold, clawing certainty, why the galaxy feared them. They didn't fight to destroy, they fought to end you. The Vorthak command bunker shuddered again, the reinforced alloy walls groaning under the relentless assault. Vorgol could feel the impacts through his claws, each detonation a hammer blow against the fortress that had stood unbroken for 3 generations. The humans weren't just bombarding them, they were dissecting the defenses, peeling them apart layer by layer with terrifying precision. Gronok's sensor array flickered, its violet holograms distorting under the strain. The scientist's claws danced across the console, but the data streams were chaos. "Their artillery," he hissed, mandibles twitching in disbelief. "They're not firing randomly. Every shell lands exactly where it weakens our shield harmonics. They've mapped our entire defense grid." Vorgol didn't answer. His gaze was locked on the external feeds. Outside, the battlefield was a storm of fire and steel. Human walkers, Ku Titans, their armored hulls scorched but unbowed, advanced through the wreckage of the Vorthak forward lines. They moved with a fluid, almost Dallas organic coordination, their massive frames weaving between artillery barrages like dancers in some grotesque waltz. Each step was calculated, each motion deliberate. One Titan paused, its heavy plasma cannons swiveling with eerie silence before unleashing a barrage that carved through a Vorthak bunker like a knife through flesh. The structure collapsed inward, its silver-purple energy core detonating in a silent, violet flash. Vorgel's claws tightened. This wasn't war. This was art, and the humans had perfected it. Colonel Helen McKay watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Iron Resolve, her fingers steepled beneath her chin. The holographic display painted the carnage in cold, clinical detail, every Vorthak position marked in violet, every human advance in crimson. Shield matrix at 47%, her tactical officer murmured. Their generators are failing. Another push and, not yet. McKay's voice was calm. She had studied the Vorthak for years. Their tactics, their psychology, their pride, they would break, but not like this. Not without understanding Svar's why. Bring in the Lancers, she ordered. A pause, then, Mem, the Lancers are. I know what they are. Her voice didn't waver. Do it. The ground trembled as the human Lancers arrived. They were not walkers, not Titans, they were monsters. Twice the height of a standard mech, their armored frames bristled with enough firepower to level a city. Their hulls were blackened by rear entry burns, their joints reinforced with enough plating to shrug off direct hits from orbital cannons. And they moved fast. Vorgel's breath caught as the first Lancer leapt, its thrusters igniting in a burst of white, hot flame, carrying it clean over a Vorthak artillery emplacement before it landed with a crushing impact. Its rotary cannons spun up, and for a single, horrifying second, the battlefield fell silent. Then it fired. The sound was beyond thunder, beyond war. It was the roar of a god descending to deliver judgment. Vorthak warriors, elite, hardened by 100 battles, were erased. Their armor, their bodies, the very ground beneath them, all of it vanished in a storm of accelerated tungsten. Gromnock's voice was a whisper. They've held back. Vorgel didn't answer. He didn't need to. The humans had come not just to win, but to teach, and the lesson was simple. You should have run. The battlefield was a graveyard of shattered Vorthak steel. Smoke coiled from the wreckage of artillery emplacements, their silver-purple energy cores flickering like dying stars. The human Lancers stood motionless now, their rotary cannons cooling in the eerie silence. The lesson had been delivered, the price had been paid. Vorgel's claws dug into the command console, his carapace rigid with the aftershock of defeat. His warriors, his elite, had been reduced to smears of molten alloy and vaporized flesh. The humans had not just broken his lines, they had shattered the illusion of Vorthak supremacy. A transmission crackled through the comms, not from his own forces, not from any surviving outpost, from the abyss. Gromnock's sensor spines twitched violently as the signal resolved, a deep space broadcast, encrypted in a code so ancient even the Vorthak archives had barely recognized it. A distress call. Their distress call. From decades ago. The memory struck Vorgel like a plasma lance to the skull. A human vessel, small, primitive, its hull patched together with crude alloys, caught in the gravitational pull of a dying star. The Vorthak had been passing through the system on a scouting mission, their orders clear: observe, but do not interfere. Yet when the human ship's engines failed, when its crew faced annihilation, one Vorthak commander had broken protocol. They had saved them, a single life, a single act of mercy, and now as the transmission played, as the human voice, weathered by time and static, echoed through the ruined command center, Vorgel understood. This is Captain Elias Vance of the Terran vessel Wayfarer. To the unidentified alien ship that pulled us from the black. We remember. We always remember. The words hung in the air like a blade unsheathed. Gromnok's mandibles clicked in disbelief. They kept the signal. All these cycles, they tracked us. Vorgel's blood ran cold. Because it wasn't just the signal, it was the timing. The humans had known, they had known the Vorthak would come, would test them, would believe them weak. And they had waited, they had let the Vorthak march into their cities, let them believe victory was inevitable, only to reveal the truth in fire and thunder. Colonel Helen McKay's voice cut through the static now, crisp and unyielding. Vorthak command, this is your only warning. Stand down, or the next lesson won't be a demonstration. The transmission ended. Silence reclaimed the ruins. Gromnok turned to Vorgel. His optics dim with something the Vorthak had no word for. They could have destroyed us. Utterly, why show mercy now? Vorgel exhaled, his spines lowering in submission to a truth he could no longer deny. Because, he said softly, we once showed it to them. And in that moment, the galaxy shifted. The humans were not just warriors, they were not keepers of debts. And the Vorthak had just been reminded how deeply they owed. The silence that followed Colonel McKay's transmission was not the quiet of defeat, nor the stillness of surrender. It was the breath before the storm, the pause before the blade fell. Vorgel stood motionless in the command nexus of his flagship, the Silver Spike, its silver, purple energy cores pulsing like a dying heartbeat. The holographic displays flickered with damage reports, entire flotillas crippled, not by overwhelming firepower, but by precision. Human railguns had struck not to annihilate, but to disable. Their plasma lances had carved through shield emitters with surgical accuracy, leaving Vorthak warships drifting but intact. It was a humiliation. Messagey. Gromnok's talons clicked against the console as he pulled up the final battle analysis. His optics flickered with disbelief. They didn't even use their most advanced weapons, he murmured. These were first-generation human armaments, older than their interstellar colonies. Vorgel's spines twitched. He had seen the classified reports, humanity's newer ships, their black ops projects, the whispered horrors of their deep space arsenals. And yet, they had chosen to fight with relics. The answer came not from the tactical displays, but from the past. 27 cycles ago, a Vorthak patrol had stumbled upon a drifting human vessel, a primitive scout ship, its hull breached, its crew dying of radiation exposure. By galactic law, they should have left it. Humanity was not yet a recognized species. They had no treaties, no protections. But Vorgel, then a junior officer, had given the order to take the survivors aboard. One human had lived, a scientist, delirious with pain, clutching a data drive filled with equations the Vorthak could not decipher. They had healed him, fed him, returned him to the edge of human space without demanding tribute or technology. A meaningless act of mercy, or so they had thought. Gromnok's voice was hollow. Days remembered. Vorgel exhaled, his armored chest plate rising and falling in a slow, measured rhythm. The humans had not struck with their full might because they were not here for vengeance. They were here for balance. On the view screen, the wreckage of Vorthak ships glittered like shattered teeth. Among them, human vessels hovered, jagged, brutal things, their armor scorched but unbroken. One in particular dominated the feed, the Iron Promisee. Colonel McKay's flagship. Its railgun batteries were still charged, its missile bays sealed. Gromnok turned to him. What do we do? Vorgel's mandibles tightened. The answer was simple, painful, inevitable. We surrender. The word tasted like ash. The Vorthak did not surrender. They fought until the last plasma cartridge was spent. Until the last warrior fell. But this was not a battle they could win. Not because humanity was stronger, but because they had fought with restraint, and that was more terrifying than any superweapon. A new transmission flickered to life. Corporal Paul Grogan's face filled the screen, his expression unreadable beneath his helmet's visor. Vorthak command, he said. his voice devoid of gloating. "Prepare for boarding. Your cooperation will determine the terms of your survival." Vorgel dipped his head in acknowledgement. The humans had not come as conquerors. They had come as judges, and the Vorthak would answer. The boarding shuttles came without fanfare, no war cries, no bombardment, no theatrics. Just sleek, black vessels sliding into the gutted docking bays of the Vorgath's Wrath, their hulls still humming with residual heat from atmospheric entry. Vorgel watched them through the fractured remains of his flagship's observation deck, his claws flexing in slow, measured tension. He had expected brutality, he had expected vengeance. Instead, the humans moved with eerie precision, their armored forms gliding through the ruined corridors like specters. Their weapons were drawn but not leveled, their posture not of conquerors, but of sentinels. Gromnak stood beside him, his antennae twitching in unease. "They could have killed us all by now," he murmured. Vorgel said nothing. That was the truth that gnawed at him. The humans had disabled their fleet without extermination. They had breached their flagship without slaughter. And now, as the first of their warriors stepped onto the command deck, Vorgel saw the insignia on their pauldrons, not the jagged sigil of a warlord, but the stark, angular emblem of an arbiter. Colonel Helen McKay entered last, her helmet retracting with a hiss of pressurized gas. Her face was unreadable, her eyes scanning the room with the detached focus of a surgeon assessing a wound. When she spoke, her voice was calm, devoid of malice. "You spared one of ours once," she said. "A single life. Decades ago." Vorgel's spine stiffened. He remembered, a human scout vessel, crippled in the fringe systems. A lone survivor pulled from the wreckage. The Vorthak had no use for prisoners. No tradition of mercy. But that day, for reasons he could not explain even to himself, he had ordered the humans spared. A meaningless act, a forgotten moment. Yet the humans had remembered. McKay stepped forward, her boots clicking against the deck. "We don't forget debts," she said. "Even ones we didn't ask for." Vorgel exhaled, the weight of understanding pressing down on him. This was not surrender. This was not defeat. This was reckoning. The humans had not come to destroy them. They had come to offer a choice, one the Vorthak had never given to others. Gromnak's voice was barely a whisper. "What do they want?" Vorgel looked at McKay, at the soldiers flanking her, their weapons still idle but ready. He thought of the way they fought, not with mindless fury, but with restraint, with purposey. And he understood. The galaxy had always seen the Vorthak as predators. The humans had seen them as something else. Something that could be more. McKay held out a data crystal, its surface glinting under the dim emergency lights. "Your people are dying," she said. "Not from our weapons, but from your own wars. Your own hunger." Vorgel took it, his claws tightening around the cool metal. Inside was salvation, and the price for it was change. The humans had not come as conquerors. They had come as teachers. And for the first time in his life, Vorgel felt the weight of something far heavier than war. The data crystal pulsed faintly in Vorgel's grip, its surface etched with human sigils, mathematical, precise, nothing like the jagged runes of Vorthak war code. It hummed with a soft, unfamiliar energy, a whisper of something beyond destruction. Gromnak stepped closer, his armored fingers twitching toward the artifact. His cranial spines, usually rigid with authority, now quivered with something Vorgel had never seen in him before, uncertainty. The scientist's eyes flicked between the crystal and McKay, as if trying to reconcile the human's presence with the impossible weight of what she had just handed them. Salvation. The word burned in Vorgel's mind like a plasma scar. The Vorthak did not believe in mercy. They believed in strength, in the purity of conquest. Yet here stood these humans, their warships hanging silent in the void, their soldiers waiting without aggression. They had shattered the Vorthak blockade not to annihilate, but to speak. McKay's gaze never wavered. She stood like a blade driven into the deck, unyielding, but not hostile. Behind her, the human soldiers remained still, their weapons lowered but not sheathed. They were not here to fight, they were here to offer. Vorthak activated the crystal. A holographic array flared to life, bathing the command deck in silver, blue light. Schematics unfolded, vast orbital farms, atmospheric processors, terraforming matrices, all designed for a world like Vorthak Prime. But these were not human designs, they were EV adaptations. Modifications of Vorthak technology, refined, repurposed. Gromnak made a sound deep in his throat, something between a growl and a gasp. His claws traced the projections, lingering over the energy redistribution nodes. This is our own reactor architecture, but stabilized, enhanced. McKay nodded. Your people are starving because your wars drained your worlds. But the same engines that power your warships can purify your oceans. The same plasma forges that build your guns can synthesize food. Vorthal's pulse thundered in his secondary arteries. This was heresy. The High Clans would tear the limbs from anyone who suggested diverting war, resources to sustainment. And yet, the projections shifted. A new schematic appeared, a Vorthak dreadnought, its weapon arrays stripped and replaced with massive agricultural bays. Its hull bristled not with cannons, but with solar collectors and atmospheric scrubbers. A warship turned lifebringer. Gromnak's voice was raw. You would have us disarm. McKay's expression hardened. No, we're asking you to choose. She gestured and the hologram split. On one side, the modified dreadnought, its new purpose clear. On the other, a projection of Vorthak Prime, as it was now, cracked continents, dead seas, the sky choked with the fallout of 1,000 orbital strikes. You've spent centuries believing strength comes only from the ability to destroy, McKay said. But real strength, she tapped the crystal. It's the ability to rebuild. Vorthak felt the deck beneath him like a precipice. This was not a surrender, it was a challenge. One that cut deeper than any blade. The humans had not come to conquer. They had come to show the Vorthak what they could be. And for the first time in his life, Vorthak hesitated, not out of fear, but because he wanted to believe. The silence on the bridge of the Void Talon was absolute. Vorthak stood motionless, his talons curled against the command console, the weight of McKay's words pressing against his spine like a blade. The hologram before him pulsed, two futures, side by side. One of ruin, one of rebirth. His first instinct was to reject it, to call it weakness. The Vorthak did not repair. They did not heal, they burned, they conquered, they left only ashes in their wake. That was their way, that was their strength. But the image of the dreadnought, his dreadnought, transformed into something else, something alien, gnawed at him. The angular weapon mounts, replaced with smooth solar arrays, the plasma lances repurposed into atmospheric stabilizers. It was grotesque, it was beautiful, and it terrified him. Gromnak was the first to break the silence. The scientist's frill, usually a muted violet, flickered with agitated silver. This is unprecedented. The energy expenditure alone, McKay didn't let him finish. We've already done the math. Your reactors can be recalibrated. Your alloy forges can produce agricultural rigs instead of warplate. The technology exists. The only thing missing is Z's will. Vorthal's mandibles tightened. He wanted to snarl, to remind her that the Vorthak did not take orders from lesser species. But the words died before they reached his throat. Because he had seen the reports, buried deep in the archives, dismissed as irrelevant, were the records of a single Vorthak scout ship, decades past. It had encountered a crippled human vessel adrift in the void, its crew suffocating, its engines dead. The scout's commander had ordered them spared. Not out of mercy, mercy was a fool's luxury, but because the humans were no threat. A curiosity, nothing more. They had transmitted the coordinates of the nearest human colony and left without another thought. Now standing before McKay, Vorthak understood the magnitude of that oversight. The humans, remembered. And they had come to repay the debt. His gaze flicked to the hologram of Vorthak Prime. The cracked continents, the dead seas, the sky choked with the fallout of their own arrogance. He had always believed the planet's decay was inevitable, the cost of their supremacy. But now, faced with the impossible, he hesitated. Not because he doubted the humans, but because he doubted Dawes himself. McKay stepped closer, her voice low. "You think we're offering pity? We're not, this is a trade." She tapped the crystal again, and the projection shifted. Blueprints, schematics, 1,000 interlocking systems. Your people are engineers. You don't have to stop being strong. You just have to decide what to do with it. Vorgil exhaled, the sound like grinding metal. Then he reached out and seized the crystal. The bridge erupted, officers recoiled, their frills flaring in alarm. Gronok hissed, his claws twitching toward his sidearm. But Vorgil ignored them. He turned the crystal over in his grip, feeling the hum of data against his palm. For the first time in his life, he made a choice that was not born of blood. "Prepare the fleet," he said, his voice raw. "We have work to do." Outside the viewports, the stars burned cold and distant. And for the first time in centuries, they did not look like targets. The Vorthak fleet moved like a storm breaking, not with the fury of annihilation, but the precision of reforging. Vorgil stood on the command deck of the Iron Tide, watching as his ships, once arrayed for war, now aligned themselves in formation with the human vessels. The sight should have been unthinkable. The Vorthak did not ally. They did not coordinate. They conquered, or they died. Yet here they were. The human engineers had already boarded, moving through the Tide's corridors with a confidence that bordered on blasphemy. They touched sacred systems, rerouted power flows, dismantled weapons that had been consecrated in the blood of 100 battles. And yet, no one stopped them. Gronok stood at Vorgil's side, his claws flexing in uneasy rhythm. "They are changing everything," he muttered. Vorgil didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the holographic display between them, where McKay's schematics pulsed like a living thing. The humans had not just given them technology. They had given them purpose. The crystal's data had revealed a truth the Vorthak had never considered. They had always been strong, but strength without direction was just another kind of starvation. A chime sounded, an alert from the docking bay. Vorgil turned, his spines lifting slightly in anticipation. The humans had promised more than just engineers. They had promised answers. The doors hissed open. A figure stepped through, taller than McKay, clad in armor that gleamed like polished obsidian. A human, but not like the others. This one moved with the weight of command, his presence carving silence through the room. Vorgil recognized him instantly, Admiral Elias Kane. The butcher of Cerberus Reach, the man who had broken 3 Vorthak fleets without losing a single ship. The bridge crew tensed, claws unsheathing, weapons humming to life. Kane didn't flinch. He met Vorgil's gaze and inclined his head. Not submission, but acknowledgement. "High Commander," he said. His voice was rough, like gravel dragged over steel. "We have a war to win." Vorgil exhaled, long and slow. Then he bared his teeth in something that was not quite a snarl, not quite a smile. "Then let us begin." Beyond the viewports, the stars burned brighter, as if they too were waiting.